Call to order the July 8th, 2024 regular meeting of the East Bethel City Council. Please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Motion is made to adopt our agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Miller seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. First item on the agenda, 4.0A, presentations and public hearings, is a public hearing on an ordinance updating the text for the Minnesota State Fire Code adoption. Who's going to be our lead speaker? Is that going to be you, Ben?
Sure. I'll just give you a quick synopsis.
If you can state your name and...
Fire Inspector Ben Uden, East Bethel Fire Department. Just give you guys a quick synopsis, kind of what's going on. So after we were conferring with the State Fire Marshal's Office on a unrelated matter a couple weeks ago, they had noted that the language in our current ordinance is outdated in relation to the fire code. So they recommended that we update our ordinance language so that we're able to cite violations and complete plan reviews per the most recently adopted version of the fire code. We gave you guys the red line changes edition copy in the packet, as well as the clean copy. Unfortunately, the State Fire Marshal Office, we asked them to weigh in on their opinion on the initial write-up, and they didn't get back to us till like this past Friday at 10 minutes to 4. So we ended up having to kind of scramble this afternoon to get it updated with their recommendations. Yep. I agree with all the recommendations that they had made, and we should adopt them kind of as noted there on the updated version that I gave you guys at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
So, and any questions?
I don't think we have any choice, do we?
Not really. It's state statute, so.
Yeah. All right.
More or less just housekeeping.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that introduction, our next step is to have a public hearing on it. So I'll open the public hearing. And if anybody has a desire to speak regarding ordinance number 2024-02, updating the text for the Minnesota State Fire Code adoption, please step forward and offer your opinion. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And do we have a motion to approve or deny this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to approve the changes.
Okay, Mr. DeRoche has made a motion to approve ordinance 2024-02. Mr. Smith has seconded it. Any discussion? Apparently no need for discussion, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Next item is the public forum. Thank you, Ben. And if you want to speak at the public forum, you're supposed to sign on the sign-in sheet. Thanks. Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Okay. Jim, you want to come on up? Name,
James
address?
Linder, I'm on East Tri-Oak Circle, and 7 weeks ago I made a request to get access to view some public records, and nothing happened for several weeks. And so 4 weeks ago, Mr. Look said the request was not clear. No one made an effort to ask for clarification, so I sent the council a copy of the request again in email. 2 weeks ago, at the last city council meeting, Mr. Look said that my request was almost ready and the city would let me know when it was ready. 1 week ago, I made a request as to when it was ready and got no response. I'm still waiting to view public records. I requested 7 weeks ago. And in addition to that, Mr. Look has recently accused me of violating a city ordinance by stating I have a second garage on my property of 232 square feet. I attempted to correct his mistake by sharing the second garage is really a garden shed and is only 142 square feet. Instead of admitting the error, he doubled down on the 232 square foot accusation and using a Craftsman measuring tape, the measurement at the foundation is 14.58 inches by 9.75 inches, or 142.155 square feet. A second email to the city restating the actual size. Still, no one has admitted a mistake.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Go ahead.
Did you check your email this afternoon?
Just before I came over here,
You did?
yes.
Well, I show an email from Carrie Frost, who's the administrative coordinator for East Bethel, and Matt Look's right hand, same as she was for Jack Davis's right hand. And at 4:04, I show either I received it or she sent it, one of the two, but I got it around that time, saying we have processed your inquiry for public records. There's a significant amount of data / number of documents for review, 500 plus pages, and that you should basically coordinate with her on how you can get it offloaded onto a thumb drive or something, because she doesn't want to print off 500 pages of data. You know.
And my initial request was just to come in and view the stuff. I didn't request that somebody go through a lot of effort sorting through stuff. I thought it would be simpler for everybody involved if I could just view it, but however.
Well, that's what she's saying. You can come in and view it,
Okay, so.
but she doesn't want to. Unless you want to pay for $500 of
No.
copying and all that stuff.
Like I said earlier, my request was just to view it. If somebody has it already edited for me, that's fine. I have no issue
Yeah.
with that.
Well, your best bet is to follow up with Carrie,
Okay, I'll do that.
and she's on the website and under
I
administration.
sent her, actually, I left.
Actually, her card is probably out there.
I
too.
left her voice message for her, like I say, a week ago, and.
Well, the
got-
good news
got no
is
response.
she is done with it and
Okay, that's
letting you
good.
know that. So
Concerning extra gazebos on my.
I don't want to go back into all this again. I mean, you've got to draw the line somewhere. Can you please go look at this information? Because this is like the 5th time where you want us to hear this, and that's not right for us.
Well, I guess the excuse that the city has been given me is that my neighbor's property is larger than mine, and both properties are under.
We're not going to
2
resolve
acres.
that here and now. We've heard it 3 or 4 times. We got it. You have a disagreement. Can you please take the next step, and that is to look at all this information that our staff has spent a hell of a lot of time putting together, and they've got a lot of other things they could be doing. And I'll be honest with you, it's really starting to aggravate me.
Well, it's been aggravating me also.
Well, yeah, but you're one of 12,000 people too. And our staff is 22 people is the staff of this city. Now, if you want us to make it 400 and increase everybody else's taxes, we can deal with this stuff all day long. But for 22 people, we have to be very assiduous about how their time is used. And that's his job, primary job, and it's just damn difficult to spend so much time on stuff like this, and you may never get an answer you want.
And
I don't know if you are familiar with it, you look old enough to know it, but life always doesn't turn out the way you want. I learned that when I was about 30.
Mayor, may I say something? My name is Linda Harvey,
I know who you are.
and the facts are wrong that were submitted from Mr. Look. That is what Jim is trying to tell
Well, you
me.
guys have met, haven't you?
The
Have you
facts
not?
are wrong. The
You've
measurements of
met,
the
right?
lot are wrong. The measurements are wrong. And
So Aaron and Matt are all wrong and you guys are all right. Okay.
The
All
measurement
right.
is incorrect. He has the,
Mr. Mayor,
I got a tape measure too, you know.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just comment, we don't have access to go on their property and measure any sort of structure. What we have, though, is a GIS service from the county where you can look down and take an actual measurement. Now, the roof of that structure is 232 square feet. The roof applies to impervious surface. The question that's raised is, why can't I have a pergola like my neighbor has?
Well,
Please don't interrupt me. And
Okay.
the reason why is because if you're at a max of your impervious surface, which is roofing, not structure frame, then you cannot have an additional structure that would increase your impervious surface. And that's the context that's missing in this conversation. Now, as it relates to the 500-some page document that was sent to your email, I received it as well. We have to compile that information. It's taken multiple hours. We have to redact that information. Redact the information that's personal information and not for public viewing. All that takes a significant amount of time. And yes, we do not have to respond instantaneously to every single public data request. That is not a requirement of the law. We have to get our work done here first, and then we can respond to these things in a reasonable time frame. And we have, I believe, based on the size of this, responded in a very reasonable time frame. And Carrie's been working her tail off trying to get this done.
Yeah,
I've been hounding her to get it done.
She's got plenty to do otherwise.
And she's been working on a lot of other things, a lot of which you'll be voting on this evening, that take a far greater priority on this than this request. The majority of which, Mr. Linder, are your emails. Your emails. You already have them. You sent them to us. And we have to compile these things, and they're taking massive space on hard drives. So what I would recommend is to read your email, which says to schedule an appointment with us. We'll provide a room for you. We'll provide a disk for you. You can review the information. If you want copies, we'll charge you for those. And that's how we'll resolve it.
And that's fine, I just needed to find out when that stuff was happening, but in talking about impervious surface.
This matter is closed, all right?
He just
Public
brought up-
hearing is closed.
he just
I've had
brought up
enough of
impervious
this.
surface, and now
Enough.
and now you're
I wish I
blaming-
had nothing else to think about but the amount you have to think about. I really do.
Well, I'm
Because this is unfair to everybody watching this.
With Mr. Look and his accusations of me being in violation. And when I challenge that, I get blown off, so.
You're the one who started saying you question his integrity. The facts
Yes,
are wrong
because
and all
I
that
helped
stuff.
him
And this is
measure-
the
I
third or
helped Jim
fourth
measure
time
that
you're
shit.
doing it. Enough.
I helped him measure the shed.
I don't give a damn. Do you get, are you
Kevin,
reading my? Come on. Enough. The public hearing is closed.
Well, thank you
God.
for your time, and I hope there wasn't a lot of redaction, but time will tell. Thank you.
I apologize for getting angry, but I have things like family members in the hospital and stuff like that that's also on my mind. And yeah, I know. You try to. But I mean, yeah. Anyway.
Consent agenda?
What?
Consent agenda?
The consent agenda. Oh, shoot, Ben left. I was going to ask him the questions. Maybe you know the answers. All right. Who wants to make a motion to
I'll make a
approve the
motion,
consent agenda?
make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Motion's made and seconded. Is there discussion? I would like to pull one thing from the approved bill list. And that was with the East Bethel Fire Department conferences and meetings, Fire Service Certification Board. I just wondered what it was for. What was being certified?
Mr. Mayor, I can get that information for you. I see it right here. Typically speaking, we have those costs reimbursed to us by the state. They don't reimburse
I
travel.
mean, what was the matter being certified?
Right, I will
You
get
have
that.
any idea?
I don't. I will
Okay.
get that for you.
All right. That's all I had. Did anybody else want to pull anything else? If not, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None heard. Next item on the agenda, 7.0, new business, Planning Commission variance request for the wetland setback. Aaron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Give me 1 minute to get everything adjusted here and we'll move forward.
It got a little heated, I get it, understand me, but the public forum was closed, I just wanna make sure it wasn't closed for some other people, maybe had a totally separate.
They weren't on the list that I just threw away.
That was my question, was anybody,
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure we didn't.
And I said, and I mentioned at the beginning of the public forum, you have to sign the list.
Yep.
No, it's good to check.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. A little background information on this particular variance request is Everything Outdoors LLC, on behalf of the property owner Dan Graff, is requesting a variance to reduce the shoreland overlay setback standard for the placement of an in-ground pool. This property is located in an R2 single-family townhome residential zoning district in the West Side Estates subdivision and is in the Coopers Lake Shoreland Overlay District. The zoning code under general regulations, section 57 of the Shoreland Overlay District classifies wetlands into multiple categories and are consistent with the criteria found in Minnesota state statute as well as the protected waters inventory map for the Anoka County. Additionally, each classification has a required setback from the identified ordinary high water level. Coopers Lake has been classified as a natural environment with a 150-foot structural setback. This residence was constructed in 2006 and was placed 161.22 feet from the ordinary high water level as identified on a certificate of survey dated May 5th of 2004. According to the survey, there is 87.60 feet of distance between the rear of the house and the rear lot line. Elevations identified on this survey show that there is a 12-foot elevation change or a drop-off between the rear lot line and the identified ordinary high water level. This area between the rear lot line and Coopers Lake is owned by the city of East Bethel and is included in the John E. Anderson Park. The property owners have proposed placing an in-ground pool with a concrete apron in the rear yard within the 150-foot shoreland overlay setback. The required rear yard setback in an R2 zoning district without the shoreland overlay component would be 10 feet. The proposed placement, according to initial drawings, is 21 feet from the rear property line. However, approximately 94 feet from the nearest point of the ordinary high water level. Section 57 of the Shoreland Overlay Ordinance, Subdivision 6 under administration, assigns compliance to the city for the use of shoreland, public waters, the size, shape of lots, the use, size, type, and location of structures on said lots, the installation and maintenance of water supply, waste removal systems, the grading, filling of any shoreland area, the cutting of shoreland vegetation, and the subdivision of land shall be in full compliance with the terms of this ordinance and other applicable regulations. And in cases where standards conflict with the standards of base zoning district, the more restrictive standard shall prevail or will prevail. Also included in section 57 is a notification to the Department of Natural Resources, copies of all notices of public hearings to consider variances, amendments, or conditional use underneath the shoreland management controls shall be sent to the commissioner or the commissioner's designated representative and postmarked at least 10 days before the hearing. Also in section 57 is D, variances. Variances may only be granted in accordance with Minnesota state statute, and no variance may be granted for prohibited uses. When a variance is approved after the Department of Natural Resources has formally recommended denial of the hearing in record, the notification of the approved variance shall be sent to the Department of Natural Resources and including a city council summary of the public record testimony and findings of fact and conclusions with which support the issuance of a variance. public hearing notice, an email copy of that notice was sent to the North Metro representative of the Minnesota DNR. On June 26, 2024, city staff received a call from Wes Saunders Pierce, the North Metro area hydrologist, who after reviewing the information supports the East Bethel Planning Commission's recommendation of denial, as this variance request is a significant reduction in the ordinary high water level shoreland overlay setback. Additionally, the Minnesota DNR generally supports the ordinance restrictions in local shoreland overlay code. Subsection 8 of section 57 shoreland overlay district. C is placement, design, and height of structures. Sub 2 is the placement of structures, which states that when more than one setback apply to a site, structures and facilities must be located meeting all setback requirements. The extent of East Bethel's pool regulation ordinance is limited to section 10, subsection 36, in which I supplied in the report. The consideration of a variance requires a consideration of a three-factor practical test. The first factor is a test of reasonableness, which means that the landowner would likely use the property in a practical way, but cannot do so under the rules of the ordinance. This does not mean that the land cannot be put into reasonable use whatsoever without the variance. In this case, a swimming pool is identified as an allowable accessory use in a residential zone. The variance request to place an in-ground pool in the shoreland overlay setback may not be a reasonable request. The second factor is that the landowner's problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not caused by the landowner himself. The uniqueness generally relates to the physical characteristics of a piece of property, that is, to the land and not the personal characteristics or personal preferences of the landowner. In this case, the property is located in the Coopers Lake shoreland overlay with very specific requirements, and the primary residence was constructed within 10 feet of those setback requirements from the ordinary high water level. The primary residence was constructed over 475 feet from the front lot line, 17 feet from the north property line, and 23 feet from the south property line. This placement limits the buildable area available on the side and rear yard for any accessory construction. There are terraced elevations throughout the property, both in the front and the rear yard. And the subsurface treatment system or septic system and well are located in the south front lawn of the house. The third factor is that the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. This factor is used to consider whether the resulting structure would be out of scale, out of place, or otherwise inconsistent with the surrounding areas. In this case, the proposed location of the in-ground pool is in the rear yard and would not be visible from the roadway. The primary residence was constructed over 475 feet from the front lot line. Standing tree growth along the property lines screen the rear yard from neighboring properties, and the degree of requested variance is significant, 58% of the shoreland overlay setback as defined by ordinance, and would be a radical departure from the scheme of city's land use controls. At the June 25th, 2024 Planning Commission, a public hearing was held in which there was no public comment. After a review of the application material and hearing from the applicant contractor, the Planning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommended denial of the variance request. City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve or deny the variance request to the standard shoreland overlay setback of 150 feet to approximately 94 feet for the placement of an in-ground pool at 23558 Ulysses Street Northeast as presented in Resolution 2024-45. I did provide you an additional drawing, site plan that was provided from the contractor to me today, which shows a little bit more specifics on where the pool could potentially be located from the ordinary high water level. It's unclear to me just by looking at this drawing if this meets or matches the certificate of survey. This is not an official document, not done by a survey company. This was provided by the contractor. If we compare the survey when the property was constructed it shows from the rear corner of the house, in the center of the house, if you look on the screen, to the ordinary high water level to be approximately 161.22 feet. And it shows that from the rear of the house to the property line is about 87.60 feet. You can compare that with the survey that was provided today by the contractor and make the comparison. The contractor also provided additional photos today that were not provided at the time of the application, which show where the pool area is staked out. To give you an idea of what the dimensions of the pool are potentially going to be located.
Is that about it, Aaron?
That's it, I'm sorry. Just trying to find that.
Thanks for all the
particular picture.
information.
For discussion purposes, I move to open it up for approval or denial. I don't know, how do you want to word it?
Are you making a motion for discussion? Or are you making a motion?
For discussion.
Okay, that would be your motion then, a motion for discussion.
Okay, I'll second that. So let's discuss it.
Well, let me understand, we're 10 feet from the high water mark, ordinary high water mark, is that what you said?
No. The house itself was placed 161.22 feet from the nearest ordinary high water mark. The setback requirement in the Shoreland Overlay District is 150 feet.
So it's
So
11
between
feet.
11.22 feet of distance from the back of the house to the nearest spot from the ordinary high water level back in 2004 when the house was constructed.
All right, because I thought the ordinary high water mark or the setback, because I live in a shoreline overlay district myself, anything from 1,000 feet from the ordinary high water mark back is considered the district or the overland. And I guess I got a question, how close is the pool going to be to the lake?
In the drawing that I provided you here,
I think
Um,
the
Did you say it would be
contractor
94 feet?
the contractor's saying that it would be from the edge of the pool, not counting the cement, concrete slab around it. The edge of the pool that would be in the ground would be 125 feet from the ordinary high water mark, according to their drawing from today.
And does the concrete count as,
So our ordinance does not define an in-ground pool or an above-ground pool as an accessory structure. However, if you're installing an in-ground pool, in my opinion, that's an accessory structure. You're taking
you're making an
action
improvement?
but that is not defined in our ordinance. So this is part of the reason why it's sitting in front of you, is to determine if we want to declare this as structure. And then if that's the case, can it be within the 150-foot shoreland overlay setback requirement? Hence the variance.
Why wasn't it thought to bring it into the front yard?
That is a question only the homeowner can answer. There is definitely, as you have identified, Councilmember DeRoche, room in the front yard on this side for an accessory structure, but my assumption is they use their backyard more than their front yard. Aesthetically, it would look better in the backyard. You don't have to worry about the protection. Their backyard is fairly secluded whereas the front yard might be open to the street. I believe the applicant and the contractor are both here if you'd like to ask them yourself as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in the front yard.
Can you come
You'll have
up,
to come-
can you come up and speak into the mic, please? Name
My
and
name
address,
is
if
Dan
you will.
Graff. I'm the owner of the property. And I'm just trying to get a decent pool in for my 11 grandkids versus an above-ground pool. The property, if you look, there's a 12-foot increase on the raise from the lake to my land, to the beginning of my land. And the pool would be 125 feet from the high water mark. It actually can be pushed closer to the deck, which would make it probably probably we would only need 15 feet of a variance. There was some misconceptions in the planning commission, because they didn't really understand that you can't, one of the comments was you can't, the people from the park might see the pool. That's not, you can't see the pool from the park. And the neighbors, all the neighbors were notified, and they have no problems. They said, make it big enough so we can swim in it too. So, I mean, I'm just trying to get a common sense that the high water mark will never, ever reach where that pool will be. And I can't put it in the front yard because my septic is on the south side, and there's really only like a 10-foot variance for the other neighbor on the other side. I mean, I could squeeze it in there, but it would look terrible. So,
When you say your septic's in
Yeah.
the front yard on the right side,
yeah.
can you kind of,
I've got a drawing, I can bring it up.
It's on the south side.
The south side, yeah. And there's also an extension in case that septic system ever fails to move further to
Right.
the east.
Second site.
So
secondary
that's why-
side?
So I can't do it there, and it's just too cramped on the other side.
And on the north side.
On the north side, yeah.
I'm Jeremy
Yep.
Summers. And on the other side of that, on the front yard,
There's your elevation, 12 feet up to where, even where
and that picture's as of today with all the rain that we've had.
Did you have these pictures? I didn't recall seeing them at the planning.
I just received them today, along with the drawing that I provided you. So
I don't know if that would have changed their mind or not.
So the elevation change, as you can see on the map here, this is the rear property line. This is all city property. So that elevation change goes uphill to his rear property line.
That's all what property?
This is city property.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it basically surrounds the lake.
Is this the situation, I watched the planning commission movie, but I'm just not positive about this. Is this the lake that has a beaver dam keeping water from
No.
coming in? Is that a different one?
That's a different one.
Okay,
This is Cooper Lake?
Cooper.
yeah, Cooper's Lake, yeah.
Okay, because I remember when someone came in for a variance to put a dock up, probably 13 years ago, 12 years ago maybe. Because I was on city council then, but they said they didn't want it out there.
Yeah, you can't have docks unless you're
Right.
grandfathered in. You can't have motors on your boat. you know,
Right, yeah,
period.
somebody
I
came
mean,
in
the
and
lake
tried
is
to
very
do it.
protected, and I'm very aware of that, you know. This pool would not interfere with any of the lake quality whatsoever. I think if I'm right, you can water your lawn and your gardens from the lake.
They kind of, when the water's been down, they shy away from that. I live
Yeah.
on Coon Lake.
Yeah, okay.
And so there are a lot of,
Like
Oh,
Forest Lake,
restrictions.
you only need a 50. We sold our cabin on Forest Lake and we bought this. You only need a 50-foot setback on Forest Lake.
And Coon Lake has a 75-foot setback. So
75.
every
Yeah,
classification
everyone's
of
different.
water is a different classification. This one is
Absolutely.
classified with a 150-foot setback.
And it's a setback, not necessarily that the water would reach.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you know
So-
what the rationale is for figuring the setbacks?
I do not.
It's
Yeah, me neither.
just how.
well, at one
the
time,
state
Coon
sets it.
Lake water came up probably 4 or 5 feet higher than what it is now. But that was back in the early 1900s.
Before the dam.
So, I mean,
Before the dam.
Even before you moved out there, huh?
what I can,
Close.
what I can demonstrate for you is that you see where the lake shore approximately is here at this map. This is the spring of '24. Now, I do have some tools available to me, and if I put in a wetland overlay map, you'll see that they've defined this as the potential shoreline. But then if I put in the 100-year floodplain map, it moves that line up even farther.
Yeah.
So
So,
this is probably why the ordinary high water mark is an average and not defined by a specific number. So therefore, that setback potentially is defined because of the changes in variation in water in the spring. That would be my estimate. I'm not a hydrologist and I don't work for the DNR, so.
What was the rationale for the planning commission saying to deny it?
It was basically, they were waiting for what the DNR's
DNR's comment.
read on the setback was. All of this goes away if it's an above-ground pool, right? It's only because it's in-ground, right?
right.
Okay.
Yep. That would be how my office, I would handle it. If it was an above-ground pool that was temporary, I wouldn't necessarily think that as a structure, although we do have some requirements for fencing for above-ground pools if they're at a certain height. But an in-ground pool requires a permit. So that led me to believe that it's an accessory structure. If we're obligating the owner to purchase a permit to put it in the ground, it should be
Well,
defined as an accessory
For a
structure.
legal question, Ms. Attorney, Eric once in a while will mention that to grant a variance or not to, there has to be the three-factor test, but that you have to be able to detail why you're denying it or why you're doing whatever. And that's why I asked why the planning commission, did they give any particular reason other than?
I mean, there was discussion from a couple of planning commissioners about, is this gonna set precedent? Do the neighbors have it? Should they, shouldn't they? If this property is allowed it, are we gonna hear from another neighbor who wants to put something in their rear yard because it was allowed in this situation? Now, granted, variances are set up with the three-factor practical test so that each case is examined based on its own merits or based on its own specifications, exceptions, characteristics of the property. So even though you may say there's a precedent, there might be, but state statute and city ordinance protects us from recognizing or saying we have to because someone else was granted this.
And also, there's not that many people on the lake to begin with, and there's not many people that are gonna put in an in-ground pool as I propose because of my grandkids, I could care less for me for putting in a pool at this stage of my life.
Hypothetical, you move, sell a house, do whatever, a younger couple comes in there and they've got some rowdy friends and they decide that they're gonna turn that pool into a big party place, how would the neighbors be with that? And I'm asking because I'm gonna get asked the same question.
Well, that's a hypothetical answer, you can't really answer that.
So-
You could do that all day long.
Have you
So-
considered an above-ground pool?
The only thing is, they look so tacky. I didn't, above-ground pools, if they're not designed right, you can't put a diving board on them. To control the depth is pretty much all one depth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And you'll be able to see it probably from the park too, I don't know.
I have a question. Your shoreline seems to be going away. Okay, so it'd be longer
It is longer on the other
from
side.
one side. Any probability of offsetting that and moving it slightly down so it would come within our standards or what they're asking?
Well, I think didn't you say that if you move that down just a touch, like
Yep.
10 feet?
If I moved it this way a little bit, it does gain almost that, but then you're right up against the trees there too, so.
I think you'd
We've
be
got
at,
47 feet to work with between the property, the
Right.
easement, 10 feet easement there.
So in our,
And already shrink it out.
in our write-up here, it has a variance request of approximately 94 feet versus the 150. And so that's approximately 65 feet that they're looking for, and you just say, well, we can move it closer to the deck, which would garner a 15-foot easement, request a variance for. So I don't know if we have all the information right now.
So Councilmember Mundell, when the application came in, I made contact with the contractor after looking at the initial drawing and indicated on the drawing that I couldn't make heads or tail of what the drawing indicated for distances. What's in the write-up is my best guess based on the application material. The drawing you got today was submitted today.
Yeah, I'm not blaming you. I'm saying I don't think we quite have enough information on this as to exact site placement and how we can work together to possibly make something function for an in-ground pool. Because based on the information that we have, they'd be 65 feet into the overlay. I don't
And
think
even
I
there,
could
there's
support
a
that,
discrepancy because
but
I heard
15
someone say it
feet.
was 125 feet.
Yeah, but
And then this
15
one, they're
feet
saying
is
94.
a little easier to work with than 65 feet.
Which is accurate. It says here in your recommendation, the variance request to the standard overlay setback from 150 feet to 94 feet. And earlier, before you fellows came up, someone said it was 125 feet, not 94 feet, which is true.
Yep.
Which of those is true?
The 125 feet. We moved it in a little bit closer to the house. To
Oh,
gain
okay.
A little less, so we're not.
Would you take the apron off on that side or
We
something?
left the apron on it, but
And just
that would
move
put it
it.
at 35 feet.
Okay, thank you.
I think the only way to exactly get the distances is to have a survey company go out there and where it's now plotted out, and they can do a certificate of survey to show us the exact distance between the edge of the pool and the high water mark.
I don't know if we exactly need that, but we need competent measurements and site placing where this is the house. We need exact measurements.
Yep.
And to see where the shoreline is, where you have the claim of we could probably only do 15 feet. We need to see that option.
Good.
Well, I guess we can table it.
Oh, we have
Then
to
it
work
won't be a
with,
denial.
we have to work with accurate information, that's for sure.
So is there anything timely on your end that we could table this and bring it back up at our next meeting?
Yep. We could get somebody out there and get it laid out dead nuts. I mean, that's an overlay over on top of your guys' stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly where the pool fits at 125. Like I said, I could move it a little bit closer.
Well, if you can have 2-3 scenarios, that'd be fine.
Okay.
But we need to see, because asking for 65 feet is a large ask, which is what we have in our.
We're only asking for 35.
Yeah, which is now different than what is in our packet.
That's why we changed it up, just
So-
to gain a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's a little give and take.
Yeah, so I do think the best course of action would be to table this. Let's get some more information on it, accurate information.
I agree
We
with
could
you.
probably meet with Aaron to see exactly what we'd be looking for.
Okay.
I'm sure he'd be happy to meet with you.
Yeah.
And then we'll bring this back up at the next city council meeting.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Looking there, it appears that there's a concrete that sticks out into the yard.
Yep.
What is that part of it for?
It's a sunken, it's basically his walkout.
Oh.
Big boulder wall there, and then you kind of walk out of the basement.
Oh,
That's one
okay.
of the pictures.
Okay, thank you.
So we
so
can't move
Mr.
any farther. Once we get too close to the house here, we actually end up on top of this over here. That's why we're, got that whole little, space in between there to get the concrete in there, which would be 4 feet around it. If you look at that diagram that I gave you guys, the one that has the 125, if I move it closer, I gotta shorten it, because the concrete will actually end up in the boulder wall. tight as I can squeeze it with 4 feet of concrete on that side.
So, Mr. Mayor, it would be a motion to postpone until a date certain, which would be July 22nd.
Okay.
So
Is that the motion you're making, Brian?
I'll make a motion to table this item until our next meeting, July 22nd.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks.
looking at this, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Second item under Planning Commission is an interim use permit for farm animals. As usual, we're gonna be leaning on you a lot tonight, aren't we,
It's
Aaron?
okay.
You got water and everything, so you can keep your voice intact? Need some cough drops?
All right, thanks again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. John and Petra Fager, the owners of 22334 Sandy Drive Northeast, are requesting an interim use permit for the keeping of 1 alpaca or llama and 9 sheep or goats, or 11 sheep or goats. The property is reported to be 5.6 acres and is located in an R2 single-family and townhome residential zoning district. Chapter 10, Section 151 requires that a minimum of 1 fenced acre of pasture land plus any indicated fraction thereof must be provided for each animal unit described in sub H, which is attachment 5 of your packet. It's a chart that helps us define how many animals and what acres are required. Although the applicant's property is legally 5.6 acres after mapping out the required setbacks, there is approximately 4.41 acres of possible pasture land with some areas of tree cover. Staff calculations would afford the applicants 1 alpaca or llama and 6 sheep or goats, or 7 sheep or goats and 0 alpaca and llama, based on their 4.41 acres. Section 10-150 defines pasture land as area with vegetation cover used for grazing livestock. Pasture growth can consist of grasses, shrubs, deciduous trees, or a mixture, but not including wetlands. The property, as of the date of the application, did not have a fence. The applicants intend on using an electric rotating fence through the pasture land available. Section 25(1)B allows for barbed wire and electric fences on lots with an approved interim use permit for keeping or confining farm animals, livestock, or for crop protection. The pasture land farm animal shelter will be required to meet all setbacks required by Chapter 10, Section 152. There is an existing barn on the property to be utilized as a shelter for the animals. At the June 26, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, a public hearing was held in which there was no public comment. After a review of the application material and hearing from the applicant, the Planning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommended approval of an IUP for 1 alpaca or llama, and 6 sheep or goats, or without the alpaca or llama, 7 sheep or goats for a period of 1 year. At the conclusion of the 1 year, the applicants would need to reapply for the IUP and recommend it be renewed for a minimum of a 5-year period. City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve the IUP for the keeping of farm animals at 22343 Sandy Drive Northeast with conditions as presented in Resolution 2024-44.
I move for
Thank you.
resolution 2024-44 for accepted, granted.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Resolution 2024-44 made and seconded. Any further discussion?
No, I watched the planning meeting and it sounds like they pretty much got everything under control.
I thought they did a good job with it too.
Is there a cost to the IUP applications?
Yep, it's a $300 application for the IUP, and then the renewal would also be $300. However, although the Planning Commission recommended 5 years, the renewal will come back to you guys in 1 year, and you can make a determination on how long you want to approve that second time around.
That was one of them that I guess kind of bothered me. because they're paying the 300 for the first one, and then they come back in another year, now they gotta pay another 300,
Yeah.
and then they're good for 5 years. Why do they have to pay the second 300?
So it's the first IUP that you would agree to today is an IUP for 1 year. That was just historically how the city had handled those in the past from my review of farm animal applications. This gives the applicant time to a 1 year time period to make sure that they could comply with all the IUP conditions. Is it introducing farm animals to a site that has not had farm animals recently? They may find out that that's too many animals or not enough animals, so that 1 year time frame gives the city some time and the applicant some time to adjust. And if everything goes good and there are no complaints and the conditions are met after the 1 year, we can approve an indefinite IUP or a 5 year or 7 year or 10 year, whatever you guys decide to define at the renewal stage or the application for the IUP for the second time or the extension or conditions.
Well, that being said, I guess I'd like to amend my motion to give them at least 2 years before they have to renew. I just think paying $600 within,
Well,
No, I think the way to do it is to go with the 1 year, and then after the 1 year is not charge them a fee again.
yeah, the
Yeah.
city can always choose
See
to
what I
waive
mean?
that fee.
Yeah, we
I
can
don't
always,
know.
so you folks, this is your property, right? So when you're back in a year and everything's hunky-dory, remind everybody on the council to say, we're not gonna collect another $300 fee, okay?
Should be
Yeah,
part of the
that'll
motion.
buy a lot of feed for those animal, or vet bills or whatever.
That should be part of the motion for clarification.
So you wanna make it part of the motion for
well,
clarification?
yeah, that's why I said I'd make it an amendment to
But
the
not
motion.
making it 2 years, just,
Well, make it 1 year, they come back and
and if
we're not
everything,
gonna, if
So-
everything's going good, then we're not gonna charge them another 300.
So within the resolution, there's an option, a blank line for you to pencil in whatever time frame you want, along with whatever number of animals you want. So
oh,
if you want me to
thinking
make
ahead there, weren't
the
you, Mr. Burry?
recommendation, I can certainly pencil those in.
Yeah.
If you want me to make the change and make it permanent in the resolution, I can certainly do that too, but you can sign it tonight and we can put in whatever you
Yeah.
want number-wise.
Yeah, let's
I
just go
think
ahead.
let them choose what animals they want, and,
Yeah, it's listed either or. They can have the llama and
Yeah.
the
yeah,
sheep or goats, or they can have all the sheep or goats. It's their choice. This is the parameters that we would be setting. If they want to do a
Yep.
combination, that's perfectly fine.
yep.
So what if they decide they want another llama for their buddy?
Then a few of the sheep would have to disappear.
Then what?
A few of the sheep would have to
Oh.
leave the farm.
Well, I mean, if you got one llama, everybody I've ever
Well,
known that had them,
I
they
think
had
that,
two.
I think the
Right?
applicants are thinking llama or alpaca to be a buddy, to be the sheep or goat
Oh.
of the goats. Kind of a herding sort of, I don't know. I'm a city kid, I don't know.
All right, well, let's not turn this into a chicken ordinance.
So if you wanna change your motion to 2 years, that's perfectly fine. If you wanna
No,
leave it at the 1
1
year.
year's fine. 1
Okay.
year's fine.
So, and,
Do we have a
did we-
workable motion at this point?
yeah, I'll make an amendment to the motion to waive the fee for this particular resolution for this particular property at the 1 year mark.
Isn't that what I said?
I don't understand. Wait, that if it's gonna be extended, there won't be an additional
No,
fee, is that what you're saying?
No, we have a 1 year IUP, and when they'd come in for at the end of that 1 year, after the city does their review, normally they'd be charged another $300.
Right.
My amendment to the motion waives that fee.
Mr. Mayor, the motion already has that in there, so I don't know that a amendment would be necessary.
Okay, I didn't quite hear those words, so I want
Yeah,
to
neither did I.
clarify it.
Okay.
Okay, so are we good?
Mr. Miller needs to agree to the change if that's the case, and
Yeah, we just gotta vote
Vote
on
on
it.
it.
He's easy.
All
That's
right.
it.
I agree.
All right. Needed a little levity. So all those, and motions been made and seconded, all those in favor of approving Resolution 2024-44 as stated. I'll leave it at that. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard.
Not too bad, guys.
Ah, very good.
Something about us and animals.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you live in a
You're right on the-
semi-rural area.
Right
that's
on the
what-
cusp of the city and the country.
If it
You're right.
wasn't farm animals, it would be dogs and cats, so. Driveway access and standards.
A little more fun information. Give me 1 second. All right, thanks again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. At the May 13th, 2024 City Council meeting, there was discussion to revisit and revise the driveway access standards ordinance. City Council directed staff to review the ordinance and provide a recommendation to address the concerns. City staff have reviewed section 15 of the driveway access and standards and have provided recommended language change to address the concerns. The proposed change was presented to the City Council at the May 23rd, 2024 work meeting, and the direction was to follow the city's established ordinance revision process and have the Planning Commission review. On June 25th, 2024, the Planning Commission held a public hearing in which there was no public comment. After review of the application material, the Planning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommended approval of the revisions of section 15 driveway access standards as presented in ordinance 24-03. City Council should review the ordinance revisions, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve the revision of section 15 driveway access standards as presented in ordinance 2403.
Anybody have a motion on this? We sent it to the Planning Commission, so we're familiar with the provisions.
Yeah, there were no alterations coming out of the Planning Commission.
All right, I'll make the motion that we approve ordinance 24-03, section 15, as proposed.
I'll second it for discussion.
I got a couple questions.
Me too.
Let her
I thought we
rip.
took the 75 feet out
So
and it's back in.
So what I did, and this is what I proposed at the work meeting as well as to the Planning Commission, that in any of our subdivisions, our platted subdivisions that have multiple lots, 2-acre lots, 2.5-acre lots on a paved city street, that they maintain the 75-foot requirement. However, the rural residential or agricultural properties that are one-offs and not part of any subdivision will be then by this change required to pave from the edge of the right-of-way, the road surface, to the property line. So 50 feet, 25 feet, 35 feet, whatever the standard right-of-way is required by
From the edge of the road
to their
the
property
line. And in platted, it would be 75, the lesser of 75 feet, or to the apron of the garage.
Correct.
Okay.
So we'll have like Stramlin Farms, we've got, TH Construction has multiple subdivisions that are, it's maybe 85 feet to the apron from the street.
Right.
They're not gonna put gravel in that little distance, they're gonna pave the entire thing, which is the 75-foot requirement. That is only for platted subdivisions.
Well, you say only for, but again, I thought we took the 75 feet out. But then I move on to the next one. Where permitted, second driveway shall be constructed and improved to current standards at the time of construction. Well, if somebody's got one driveway and they're doing good and they want to put another one in, maybe they're not going to use it asphalt or concrete, maybe they just want class 5 or whatever, because it's just not that big a deal to them. Just like we made that variance for that place on Durant, unless it becomes an issue, I don't see why I don't understand why these things changed. Because as I recall at the meetings, staff was going to get in contact with us and figure out what's gonna work for the ordinance. And I never had any contact with anybody. But
I did present this at the work session on May 23rd, 2024, asking for feedback and got no feedback other than to have the planning commission review it.
Well, I thought that was something we were gonna give feedback after the meeting, in between, before the next one.
So regardless of whether it's a driveway today or a driveway in 6 months from now, our ordinance requires that it be paved within 1 year of construction. So whether it's
Okay.
a second driveway in the rural or the agricultural areas, those are the only places allowed to have a second driveway, unless you approve a variance for a second driveway in the other zoning districts. They're gonna be required to only pave to the property line on those second driveways. So from the edge of the roadway.
Yeah.
And
to
and
the
after
property
that,
line
it could
on
be
the second
class
driveway.
5 or
Then they can do
whatever.
whatever they want after that.
Okay.
We're just trying to
that
prevent
help?
the pollution and rocks and stuff from getting out onto the traveling surface
Yeah.
by maintaining the pavement of the first 33 feet. If it's Durant Street, for instance, I believe the right-of-way is only 33 feet wide.
Well, I know there was a lot of concern that came up when we did the variance on the Durant Street place. And even with all the rain and the black dirt and stuff that's there, I haven't seen an issue with Durant Street. Which apparently at the time was a big concern. Well, geez, they're gonna be making a mess, and they did come in and level out the dirt. I haven't been back since then, but I just wish that this stuff, when we discuss it, I went back and tried to find the work meeting minutes. And for that particular work meeting, I couldn't find the minutes. Because I usually like to have backup information that I can say this is what's in the minutes, and you can't argue with the minutes.
The June 24th work meeting minutes, you approved those tonight in the consent agenda, so you wouldn't have had access to them. They would have only been draft minutes.
Oops.
They would have been approved tonight in consent.
There you go. Because the only minutes I saw in here were the actual city council meeting minutes.
But I have in my report that it was on the May 23rd work meeting, so that tonight's wouldn't have been in there. It would have been in the May's work meeting, which I don't know if we
Yeah,
catalog those
this
on the
is
website
the
or.
work meeting from the 24th. This isn't in May when we were first discussing that variance. What I'm saying, before the stuff comes up here, we need to have some heads up and have enough information. If there's gonna be a change, it's like the architectural ordinance that took 13 months to get through. Because it would go in, and then it'd come back to the city council meeting, and there'd be changes made that we didn't agree with. And so then we'd kick it back again, and then it'd come up with something else. And
I'm not saying this to be argumentative, Councilmember DeRoche, but propose whatever you'd like tonight and pass it. We will move on. We'll make the ordinance whatever it is. I mean, we did bring it up at the work meeting looking for discussion. I'm not sure how you want to handle it, but you can amend this
well,
however you
there's-
want tonight.
I got 4 other council people up here, they can.
Does
Voice their
anybody
opinion.
else have any issues with the ordinances proposed?
I agree with Bob saying too, 75 feet, I thought we discussed it, that was too much. And at the planning commission at one time, I don't remember the dates, but they had also agreed that seemed like it was really out of line. But now, for some reason, now it just seems like it's not out of line. And I think we should change it. 75 feet, in my opinion, is way too long.
Yeah, Mr.
Property
Mayor.
line.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can, we had discussions about 2 different type of properties here. So you have the residential zoning district and you have the rural residential zoning. The rural residential was the Durant Street project where we were requiring them to do 75 feet. We wanted to shorten that. The residential district, we're just saying match what's currently there, so that you don't have a new house coming in and they're only gonna pave the first 5 feet and leave the rest, whereas everybody else had to pave 35 feet or whatever the amount was. It's up to 75 feet, but it's not requiring 75 feet.
And instead of having a fixed 35 feet or 33 feet or 42 feet or whatever,
Right, it's just,
it would just be from the road to the property line. So it's 15 feet, fine, you're lucked out, you got a 15-foot asphalt bill. And if it's, you know,
So what
50 feet,
what's
then
the
it's longer.
75 feet then even mean, basically, just? to
That's
give it-
in the
Platted
that's in
subdivisions.
platted subdivisions, not in the rural agricultural.
So you're gonna have denser communities, you're gonna have more traffic in the platted subdivisions than you
Yeah.
will in the rural residential area where it's one driveway per 20 acres of property, where you're not gonna have as high traffic.
You have curb and gutter.
Curb and
you have a
gutter,
lot of-
storm sewer, those kind of
Yeah.
things.
So
why
just in curb and gutter type developments?
Well, or any
basically.
platted subdivision that has, stormwater, that's essentially what
Something.
platted subdivision is they've put a lot more time and effort into making it more urban, if you will. But certainly, as I said, you guys can make any recommendations you want, and we'll figure out how to make that happen, but this seemed to be, in my opinion, a solution that accommodates all of the concerns, as well as keeping our platted subdivisions more
Uniform.
aesthetically
Refined.
pleasing.
Yeah, like Brian just said, uniform.
Yeah.
There's a look to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that was May 13th?
The May 23rd work meeting is what I have in my notes.
So I'm on the city website, I've got May 13th, May 29th, June 10th. I mean, that's what's
Do
on
you
the
have
website.
anything to add? Brian, Tim?
Nope. If there's no more discussion,
If not, I'm gonna call the question, I guess.
Go for it.
I mean, this is, I thought what we all agreed to.
And Mr. Mayor, even with the changes that are here this evening, if you decide at some point later this is not working, or whatever the case
Yeah,
is,
you
it's
can just
it's
change
a
it.
living document, it can be
Yeah.
changed, so.
Yeah, we're not, I don't see Aaron with a chisel and a hammer over there with a block of marble. So. Anyway, I'm calling the question. All those in favor of ordinance 24-04, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That was passed. Not sure everybody voted, but so the next thing is section 10-151, interim use permit and acreage requirements for domestic farm animals. Non-domestic animals prohibited. I'm guessing those are the ones that say cock-a-doodle-doo, right?
It is about roosters. Thanks
Planning
again.
Commission certainly dealt with that topic.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at the May 13th, 2024 city council meeting, there were multiple resident complaints regarding a rooster lodged at the public forum. City council directed staff to review the ordinance and proposed a recommendation to address residential concerns. City staff reviewed section 10-151 and have provided a recommended change. The proposed change was presented to the city council at the May 23rd, 2024 work meeting. City council direction was to follow the city's established ordinance revision process and have the planning commission review. At the June 25th, 2024 planning commission meeting, a public hearing was held, and there were 2 residents that spoke. One was in favor of prohibiting roosters completely, and the other recommended the city consider some sort of incremental allowable number of roosters based on acreage. After discussion, the planning commission recommended including a provision prohibiting roosters on any lots in a platted subdivision. By a 4-to-1 vote, the planning commission recommended approval of the revision of section 10-151, interim use permit and acreage requirements for domestic farm animals, non-domestic farm animals prohibited, as presented in ordinance 24-04. The city council should review the ordinance revision information, consider the planning commission's formal recommendation, and approve, deny, or recommend a modification to ordinance 24-04 revising section 10-151 interim use permit and acreage requirements for domestic and non-domestic animals. Page 57 has your change, which essentially made a change to section O, which section O previously stated roosters are prohibited on lots smaller than 1.5 acres. With the Planning Commission's recommendation, it now states roosters are prohibited on lots smaller than 1.5 acres or on any lots in a platted subdivision, and no more than 1 rooster is permitted on all other lots.
And that's exactly what ordinance number 2024-04 says.
Correct.
And the Planning Commission, I give them credit, they thoroughly discussed that matter. Any motions, anything? Well, then I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2024-04.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so the vote is 3-2?
I'm not for it.
Did you vote? I don't know if, I didn't hear you.
I said it very quietly.
You said it very quiet.
I'm just tired of arguing, just,
Well, I mean, you voted for it or against it?
well, I watched the planning commission and I didn't think they came with any resolve. I know some of the things in question were anything under 1.5 acres, you could have 1 rooster. And I know there was a large discussion on, well, what if you got 50 acres and you could still only have 1 rooster? And I thought they were, well, I don't say I thought, I watched it. I know there was a lot of concern about just saying, some people wanted to say no roosters at all. And you know what, folks, this is East Bethel. We're rural up here. Maybe you don't have chickens in the cities, but when you move up here, some people do. And I don't know how you control them, put a shot collar, whatever you do. But to just tell people, I mean, if you got 30, 40, 50 acres, and you got a coop somewhere, and what the one gal brought up, and I haven't had a chance to look into it, she said, you've got to have roosters for certain hens or certain types of hens. And I'm just not for it right now. I think there was no resolve that night. And I think they decided that they were just gonna leave it up to us. Or as Aaron, you say, the powers that be vote on it. So here we are.
Well, do you guys have anything you'd like to voice?
Well, I just think it's too early. We just did this. Got away with the chicken fees and all this other stuff.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't about roosters, that was about number of chickens you could have.
Yeah, well, it included rooster at the time. It's part of the deal. The complaint that came in, at least the 1 or 2 from the one neighborhood, we took the time, Councilman Smith and I went over there, we sat for 15 minutes in that neighborhood. I didn't hear 1 chicken, I didn't hear 1 rooster. We actually went up to the door of the people who would supposedly own these roosters, and nobody answered. You hear a lot of animals in East Bethel. I just think it's too early. It's such a big city with a lot of country folk out here, and we like to have chickens, and some of them have roosters. I have chickens, I have a rooster. My rooster has gotten into 2 fights now with a hawk. I don't know if that means anything, but I like having a watchdog over my roosters in the backyard, or my chickens.
You're not, are you in a platted subdivision?
No.
Yeah, this is only for platted subdivisions. Or on any lots in a platted subdivision.
Most of our
So-
platted subdivisions
what
are
you
2.5
don't like-
acres, aren't
So
they?
what you don't like is no more than one rooster is permitted
The
on all
rural
other parcels.
subdivisions.
What's that?
The rural residential subdivisions are minimum acreage size is about 2.30 acres, roughly. Our ordinance allows 2 acres, but
Is that what that one down on Durant Street is, that they just put in?
Durant Street.
Yeah,
Remember
Durant
the
and
wetland?
74?
Had to move the driveway. The last thing we dealt with, a 35 foot.
That was like 20 acres, I think.
That's probably a 20-acre lot, I think, as Mr. Mundell indicates.
So that's not part of a platted.
No, wouldn't be part of a platted subdivision, but
So,
anything with,
so what you guys don't like is no more than one rooster is permitted on all other parcels. You know, particularly thinking if they're 20+ acres or something. Yeah.
Well, I think there was also that one person said they wanted, instead of 1.5 acres, they wanted it brought back up to 3 acres. I think Tanner brought that up.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, that's not in here, right?
No.
So,
no, because I just gave you what their motion was and the vote total.
So it would be no more than one rooster is permitted on less than 3 acres? Is that what you're
well, that's what
saying?
they proposed.
That's what they said, but it's not
But
in
that didn't pass.
That wasn't in the motion. That
Yeah.
didn't pass through the resolution.
No, they just,
Well-
they
well-
actually
well, what-
wanted to table it. Sharon wanted to table it and then bring it back to the planning commission again.
Well, what do we want to do with this then? Let's move it along
Well,
here.
it did, if it was a 2 to 3 vote, it did fail.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah, the motion failed, so there would need to be a reconsideration with whatever is proposed and see if that passes.
Well, what do you guys think? I mean, rooster per, you know, and then the same gal brought up the point, she said, well, normally people have 2 roosters, so if something happens to one, then the younger one coming up knows how to take care of business or protect them or do whatever roosters do. I don't know enough about them, but I can't argue with somebody that apparently raises them. Anybody out in the audience know? Do you? You wanna come up to the podium?
She was one of the people who spoke at the public
Oh,
forum.
all right.
Are there non-crowing roosters by chance?
Sorry, no. Petra Fager, 22343 East Sandy Drive. What I said at that meeting was the 2 main reasons that I would want to have more than one rooster is they're not as effective when they're younger. So if your 2-3-year-old rooster dies and you got to go get a rooster chick, I mean, you've got no protection for your hens during that grow up time, and he may or may not know what the heck he's doing.
Right.
Whereas if you've got a adult grown rooster and then like an alpha rooster and then beta, gamma, whatever, the younger ones are learning what to do by watching the alpha. The second reason would be if you're breeding more than one kind of chicken, just like say you're a dog breeder and you're breeding dachshunds and you're breeding Great Danes, well, you need a male and a female Great Dane, you need a male and a female dachshund. So
Right.
if I've got more than one type of chicken that I'm doing, meat chicken, laying chicken, I need a rooster of that kind and a rooster of that kind.
Well, I was kind of close.
Yeah, you got it.
So are these free range chickens clipped or something, or are they in a coop?
No, they're in a coop. They've got
Yeah.
a coop and a run.
Hmm.
Yep.
Well, what do you guys want to do? Thank you.
Thanks.
If there
Thank you.
are no other motions, the ordinance stays as on the books, and or if you want to propose changes, we can certainly revise
Well,
it,
we
bring it back, or
can
you
work
can
it
make-
out at a work meeting, and then when it comes to the city council, it'll be exactly the way we're gonna do it, right?
Yeah, might as well be now, to mention that we are gonna be broadcasting our work meetings. You'll be happy to know. Yeah. discussed it with Mr. Look, and
Well, if the
that
other
was
motion
my
failed, then
original
I make a motion,
inclination,
we leave
but-
the ordinance as it is, we discuss it at a work meeting.
Oh, you can just table it and.
You can just,
Yeah.
we don't even have to
Actually-
table it, it just failed for that, and we can bring it back.
Right. And
So
I'll get that-
your
let's
request.
put it
Get
on
on
a
the work
subsequent work
Yep.
meeting
Yep.
agenda, please.
Yep.
Okay, so that motion failed to approve,
Darn chickens, boy, they've taken more time.
well. So that was 2024-04, that the ordinance number there, and the vote on that was a fail. Okay, that takes us to number 5, meets and bounds split. 516.
Mr. Mayor, if we can just,
217.
identify for the record, those that voted against, I believe was, Councilmember
DeRoche,
DeRoche,
Miller, and
Councilmember
Smith.
Miller, and Councilmember Smith, and the rest voted for it. Okay, thank you.
Yep, Lewis and Mundell voted for it. Okay. Once again, Mr. Berg, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. On June 10th, 2024, Keith Gallagher submitted an application for a meets and bounds split of a 20-acre parcel of land located at 516 217th Avenue Northeast into 3 parcels. The first parcel will contain the original single-family home and will be divided off as a 10-acre lot. The remaining 10 acres will be subdivided into 2 5-acre lots. The property proposed for the division is zoned rural residential, and per city code appendix A zoning section 42, the minimum lot size for any division in the rural residential zoning district is 2 acres. To be eligible for using a meets and bounds split division as outlined in the zoning code, the following conditions must be met. The parcel must be a minimum of 5 acres. The parcel must have a minimum road frontage of 300 feet. The parcel must contain 23,000 square feet of buildable area as defined in other portions of the development ordinance. Appropriate road, public utility, and drainage easements as outlined in Ordinance 151 as amended must be dedicated to the city. Park and trail dedication fees as adopted by the city council by resolution must be paid at the time the city certifies the division of the parcels. This request meets all the minimum requirements for a meets and bounds parcel split by city code. At the June 25th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, they reviewed the petition for a meets and bounds parcel split to ensure that it satisfies all the requirements of city zoning code. By a 5-0 vote, the Planning Commission recommended to the City Council to approve the parcel split with conditions as identified in Resolution 2024-41. City Council should review the request, consider the Planning Commission's formal recommendation, and approve the meets and bounds parcel split with conditions identified in the resolution.
Make a motion to approve the meets and bounds split with resolution 2024-41 with the conditions identified within that resolution.
Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2024-41, approving the meets and bounds split.
What effect is this
Discussion.
gonna have with Met Council?
None. This is in our rural residential zoning district. So those parcels are allowed to be split down to a minimum of 2 acres. They're splitting them into 5-acre parcels. So we would potentially be adding 2 more single-family homes to our rural residential zoning total.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, well, all those in favor of approving the resolution, number 2024-41, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. And I don't know if we want to handle it as a point of order or something like that, or how you want to deal with it, but due to circumstances beyond our control, we can't deal with department reports, community development, the variance for Cedarwood Estates. We have to wait for some legal evaluations to take place.
Somebody could just make a motion to move it to July 22nd, 2024.
Motion to postpone till July 22nd.
I'll make a motion to table this item variance 1815 for 6 Highway 65 Cedarwood Estates to our next meeting in July the 22nd.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to postpone this until our next regular council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Discussion.
Oh, I thought we already had.
Aaron, does
Sorry.
this fall in within our timeline?
Yep,
extension?
we have an extension until
August.
August 4th.
Yep.
Okay.
So
just
we
wanted-
have one more meeting before the required deadline. We won't have to hold a special meeting if we put it on the July 22nd agenda. It will still be within our time frame.
And what is the reasoning for this delay?
We're waiting for our city attorney to have time to review a letter that was received from the petitioner, the variance petitioner, their legal representation, I should say.
But we've gotten all the other information that we asked for?
Mr. Mayor, we've received the other information. The letter so far is, I guess, making some claims that the city may not be in agreement with, and we need legal representation to determine if that's accurate or not. And then we can proceed from there. We've notified them that we were pulling it from tonight's agenda, and we'll have it on the 22nd.
Oh, I wasn't talking about that part. We had asked for verification that from the MPCA
Yes, we've received all that.
Oh,
and
as far
whatever
as
else Jim asked for.
you're talking about the treatment plant?
Right.
Is that what you're referring to, that the treatment
Yeah,
plant was?
Cedar Creek.
Yeah, well, Cedarwood, yeah,
whatever,
that their,
Cedar Woods.
their cedar, or their
Cedar something.
their septic or sewage treatment was up to snuff, and yeah, we did get that.
All right, well,
I got my info right here that I asked for. So I went through it all.
okay.
Okay. So we've had our discussion. Any further discussion? All right, seeing no interest in that. All in favor of tabling this until we believe it's the July 22nd?
Yep.
Regular city council meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Does the city administrator have anything you want to, or
I do.
Mr. Berg? I think we've worn him out already though, but.
I do, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to follow up here on that request for that fire service certification expense that was on here. This is for a Fire Officer 1 certification exam taken by David Bailey, Ryan Henry, and Jordan Hill. And just kind of, I was actually sent
Thank
a
you.
text off to the fire chief to see if he'd give me an explanation on that, but I Googled it here and it says it's a certified fire officer course intended for the firefighters seeking certification as a fire officer. And the participants should either be an officer on their respective department or seek fire officer duties. And it doesn't teach tactics, but it prepares a student for day-to-day officer operations at the fire department, so.
Well, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
A couple other things. I did, last Tuesday, I attended the county board meeting. We had a assessment contract that was before them that did pass without any, really any
That was
conversation on
for
it.
property tax assessment, yeah.
Right, yep. So that went through, and then they also had the ditch abandonment that, that Capstone was working towards, and that passed with public comment. It was actually very good that they had the public come in a couple of evenings before that so that they could express their concerns, talk through any issues. There was no one then at the public comment for that, and that passed with flying colors. The other thing I wanted to comment on is we're familiar with broadband and the ARPA dollars that the county has and their efforts to try and invest that in areas that are underserved. East Bethel is one of them. And the county originally went out with a request for proposal to see if there's interested midcos or whomever that would be interested in receiving dollars for projects. They then switched that to a grant-based system. in which the providers then sent in requests for grants. We talked a little bit about would the city be interested in contributing to some of that. That was that discussion for that grant. Now word is that none of the applications met the grant requirements. So these dollars are sitting there essentially, they were allocated, at least verbally, in terms of meeting underserved areas. And so I've reached out to our county commissioner and somewhat asking them to fast track this, that the problem's not going away, right? I mean, it's underserved areas are not all of a sudden gonna miraculously become served. We need to invest those dollars that are there. We need to facilitate the providers, however, reasonably, that can be done to facilitate these projects. And then obviously there's a time from receipt of dollars to commencement of work to completion of work. I mean, it's still a long road before anything can happen. So this running of the clock, if you will, is probably not very helpful for the efforts that we're trying to get accomplished here. So wanted to make everyone aware of that. It's I'll continue working with those at the county to try and impress upon them the need to, they say, fish or cut bait, just make a decision here. Let's
So
get
why
this
did
done.
none of the applications make it? Or did they change the parameters, or?
Is it a moving target?
Yeah, it was kind of I think it was a 50-50 contribution before. They were hoping to spread out the dollars initially, but we had that discussion with them that if you have a city of Nowthen, for example, that is more densely, less wetlands, more densely developed areas, the cost to extend broadband is less than East Bethel, for example, because you've got wetlands now you have to cross to try and get
Physical realities,
these pods of land. And so when you look at a 50-50 contribution, there would be more 50% contribution on our end than it would be on their end, so to speak. So it's not necessarily an apples to apples comparison. And so that was my encouragement for them to take that into consideration, that we may need some extra consideration on that to try and accomplish the goals here that other communities may not have. But at any rate, for whatever reason, that did not meet the grant requirements. I'm not sure how it wouldn't have, but I intend to try and find out and try and get a better explanation on that. And meanwhile, try and just, like I say, encourage them to maybe allocate money and go from there. Let the community decide how they're gonna distribute it and try and utilize these dollars before. I know ARPA dollars has there's a running of the clock on that too. It has to be expended by a certain time period.
Right.
Projects have to be started or completed by a given date, and they take too much more time. It's going to become an impossibility to get done. So we want to take advantage of that certainly if we can. Anyways, that's my my update for today, and stand for any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Matt?
I understand we had a pretty big house fire on Quincy this week. Everybody okay over there, or?
Yep, everybody was fine, and it was a complete loss, and firefighters responded, and so by way of fires, that was maybe a good one. I mean, not
Who all
not
responded?
for the
Our
family
guys,
that lost their home,
Yeah.
but no one was injured, and so yeah.
Who all responded? Did Oak Grove and East Bethel, or
And I'm not sure if there was
Linwood, or?
East Bethel did. I'm not sure if there was mutual aid on that or not.
God, you'd almost think so with a full structure.
Yeah, they go up pretty quick though. They can burn quick.
Yeah.
So. And I don't think it was fireworks related, but
Well, it wasn't me.
Anything else, you guys?
Mr. Miller?
Nope.
Yeah,
Well,
we all look at Tim.
on behalf of Stephanie Dorn, our Director of Booster Days, I was asked to say Booster Days is coming up next weekend before our next meeting on the 20th, Saturday the 20th. Lots of stuff to do there, starting out with the pancake breakfast, car show. There's petting zoo, inflatables, canine demonstration. There's going to be a couple bands, I think, possibly a talent show. East Bethel's Got Talent, and following up with a band and fireworks at dusk. And I'm sure that there's more there that I'm forgetting about. But I wanted to bring that up and
Would you happen
say,
to know,
come out, residents, and
would you happen to know if she's gonna be letting us know again about when to appear, or what slots might be available for council members to go to a booth?
Well, Jim and I,
I saw
I
one
believe
email about
Carrie
that.
sent out a document that's a
Yeah,
sign-up
a couple weeks
document.
ago,
That's
but,
where I signed up, be in
Okay.
the council booth.
Okay,
So, I guess maybe ask Carrie, or
Yeah.
look at your email. I think it was like 2 weeks ago that I got that email.
yeah,
So-
that sounds about right.
I think you
Jim and
might
I-
have hit
Jim
the
and I
old
are there from
circular
3 to
file.
5. I know that.
Frick and frack from 3 to 5.
And then, I believe, Brian, you're there after 5.
Yep,
Right.
5 to 7, something like that.
Okay. Anything else, you guys? I just want to bring up a couple things.
Go ahead.
We've been talking recently about, I was gonna talk to some people on the planning commission, I figured I'd just throw it out here. We know that we have a complaint-based zoning enforcement system. And the logic there is the people most directly and closely affected by zoning violations, for lack of a better term, are the ones that should be listened to in the event of a complaint. And it occurs, we have a situation in East Bethel, and it's been a long time, someone's been working out of their home, a business, and the council's dealt with it to some extent. And it looked like it was gonna be enforceable, and we say how we hate enforcing such things because it's a person's livelihood and all this, so it's been given a lot of attention. But what occurs to me, is, you know, we are in favor of democracy, and hence the democracy of the complaint being most highly valued when it's from adjacent property owners. It seems like there ought to be some way to have a lot more local democracy about this disposition. In other words, just the fact that you have one person who complains and you are violating an ordinance, or your conditional use permit, or interim use permit has run out, whatever, shouldn't be the final measure if 19 out of 20 people who live right around you think what you're doing is fine, and just one person who may not like you votes against you. So I just want to throw out there, I don't think I came up with anything new or anything, but just kind of a local democracy kind of approach to zoning ordinance enforcement. And I just...
1, Kevin Lewis.
Beats me. I don't know what turned it on. But anyway, I just want to throw it out there just as some food for thought. If there's a way that we can make our zoning enforcement more democratic and more locally based, it seems like it would be a good development to me.
I think that's a good idea.
Well, and the other thing is, I wanted to give everybody an update. I'm still talking, and Matt is dealing with them too, the ACET, which is the Anoka County Election Integrity Team. Still learning about what our options are as far as requesting a post-election review of some of the elections in East Bethel. Oak Grove has done this, Ramsey's done it. Just as a check and balance to make sure that our elections are being fairly conducted, that there's no election fraud involved. And so we're still in conversations with them about how to do that and how to manage the cost, because the election judges count ballots, and they are paid, fortunately. So the more ballots they count, the more time, the more pay. So we're trying to strike a good balance of that, but we do want to have a bit of bird dogging going on. It's just a good practice, because it's got to be real close to the most fundamental right we have, and that is our franchise to vote. And so I take it pretty seriously, and hopefully others do here. And so I just want to give you an update that that conversation is ongoing. And my best guess at this point is it'll be limited to several races and a kind of a random selection of which district, or which precinct, I mean, instead of doing the whole blanket thing. So that's all I had, just 2 topics.
I got one more. A lot of people have been posting about, can people pick up their dog excrement when they go to Booster East or Booster West? And then a couple chimed in and said, yeah, well, geez, I've been bitten by somebody's dog. And people's dogs are coming out and charging both the people and the dogs. And the whole time I've been on city council before and now, I'm thinking, geez, you know, we haven't had a potentially dangerous dog issue. What happened? Well, what happened is people apparently haven't been reporting it. And so I think if somebody puts it out there, we need to address it. Because if I'm not sure from a legal standpoint, if a couple people complain the dogs are biting, and then they can sue the city if we don't do anything to get that under control? No?
I don't believe that creates any liability for the city. You enforce your ordinances as you are made aware of them. So if the city was made aware of a potentially dangerous dog and chose not to enforce their ordinance, there'd need to be some sort of record as to why that was not occurring. But typically this is handled at a law enforcement level complaint. So the complaint about the potentially dangerous dog bite would be made to local law enforcement and not your city staff. And then it would be processed from a law enforcement perspective. And then potentially brought before the city council to make a motion on as to regarding the designation of potentially dangerous dog, and then later a dangerous dog.
Well, yeah, I mean, this isn't the first rodeo. It used to be people would complain, they'd come in, talk to Jack or whatever, he would try and get them to work it out. And if not, whoever got bit would call the deputies, he'd come, write them a citation, the dog would go in quarantine. You'd have to show the rabies papers and all that good stuff. And then it would show up at a city council meeting with us to decide, do you keep the dog, do you put restrictions on it, or do you have the dog put down? I mean, I don't recall, maybe one.
There haven't been many the past year.
There's one recently, I was here a year or 2 ago, where a dog was put down.
Yeah, there's a major one where
It was very bad.
yes, and we called in a independent.
It was, yeah, it didn't even go through the potentially dangerous, it was
Yeah, we had an independent
hearing officer.
hearing officer conduct that
Mhm.
hearing, and just to have a bit of a separation between us and,
Mhm.
plus we wanted, with that severe of a case, we wanted a professional
Mhm.
to handle that. And
Well, that being said, if nothing else, we gotta do it for PR reasons. I mean, we can't be letting people's dogs bite our residents.
Well, we don't, but accidents do
Well,
happen.
It's happening.
It does happen, unfortunately. The city doesn't say, yes, it's okay, we have rules against it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
We can't walk behind everybody's dogs and,
So procedurally, Councilmember DeRoche, the sheriff's office would take the report and then gets forwarded to Carrie, who's Matt's assistant.
Right.
Carrie distributes them to my office for cataloging electronically, and then the city administrator, along with the sheriff's office report, makes the determination on whether the bite was escalated enough to be brought in front of you. So we are getting reports. However, the one I saw today, there was a bite. However, the skin wasn't broken, and the victim didn't want to seek medical attention. So the deputy verified that the animal had its rabies vaccination in April, and the dog was allowed to remain in the care of the owner and told to, maintain the quarantine period in home. And that's a decision that can be made administratively. Now, if there's a break in the skin, there's medical attention sought, then that escalates the report into coming in front of you for review for a potentially dangerous or dangerous dog declaration.
Well, I'm just going on history, and God knows I like my history. But that being said, I know people that were brought up for potentially dangerous dog because their dog was inside a fence, ran up to the fence and scared somebody. In fact, it happened with Susan Urkel. So it wasn't necessarily a bite, break the skin. It was, the potential was there, and it was brought.
So if you want to give direction to city staff to bring you all of those instances for you to review, we can certainly do that. I don't think you want them all.
I don't think that's what I asked for.
Okay, I'm just saying that that can be done.
Hey, speaking of dogs, it seems like every week there's something online or in social media where dogs that are found are being dropped off at different areas. Is there any way we can get a clarification on this so our residents know exactly what to do with a lost dog, or, you know, something we can put in our flyer or something so they can see this? Because it's become an issue.
I know we have in the past put it in the bulletin. We can certainly repeat it, for sure.
That'd be great.
What was that you mentioned?
We, that's right.
What's that thing?
The East Bethel Bulletin.
Oh,
Which is at the
What's that?
mail house right now.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion to adjourn made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. We stand adjourned.